Teachers, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wayne in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VTWProductions.com. You're listening live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT, this Sunday, the 28th of January, 2018. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. How you doing today, Ken?
I'm good, my man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm joined here in studio again by our friend Akko. Welcome, Akko.
Hello.
Hey.
And of course, you are here joining us as well. So, hey, everybody. We're going to kick things right off with a little bit of
functional deviations.
So, Ken, what have you been doing that hasn't been all geeky and all this week?
I've had a kind of work as usual, right? Like I don't have. That's pretty much my life. So I traveled down south to go to Ipswich. I drove all the way down and all the way back up this week, so that was a good 8 hours on each end. So that pretty much took out all of my Wednesday and all of my Saturday. And then in between I was doing work down there, and before that I was doing work, and today I was doing work actually as well. So that's most of my week. But the one thing I want to bring up at work that was vaguely interesting was I changed supervisor at university. So not my main supervisor. I've still got him because he's the one driving the plans behind where my PhD is going. But I decided to change my second supervisor because, basically I met the guy in an official meeting once, and it was only because he absolutely had to be there for me to. So basically, we have like a. Since I'm a PhD student and not an undergraduate or master's, there's no examinations as such. There's only vivas, and in our university, a viva is only mandatory at the end of first year and at the end of your final year. Okay. Otherwise, they're kind of optional. Basically, if it's a case of we're not sure where your research is going, we might have more. Or if there's concerns with funding or whatever, we might have more frequent vivas. Or if there's any other concerns, we might have more just to check on progress. But basically, everything going in my PhD is pretty much fine. So I had one at the start, and I'm planning to have one at the end, which is obviously mandatory to actually see if I pass or not. And in a way, that's a lot more stressful than any of the sort of undergraduate master degrees, because at least in those, you have continual assurance of good progress and knowing your stuff, and you get marks and grades and feedback. Whereas in a PhD, you get the final one, and that's pretty much it. You find out if you pass or fail the entire degree all at once, right? You find out how well you're doing at the very, very end. And so, because this other guy only showed up to my first year Viva and hasn't been to any other meetings, hasn't really been in touch, hasn't really been particularly helpful. Not that I'm blaming him. It's just, he's a very busy man. And so I would just prefer to have somebody that I'm working with more frequently. Because my main supervisor is already somebody who's quite a busy person. So I'd like to meet with somebody at the university more frequently and make the most of the university's resources that are available and the excellent skilled people here.
Gotcha.
And so, I decided to change this week, and I have. So I've now changed my second supervisor from a professor who heads most of the funding here and such, and is doing very well for himself. And instead, I decided to swap to a postdoc, which is somebody who's just after a PhD, which is a very unusual thing to do. And in fact, we actually have to protect this against the rules, because we should be postdocs aren't supposed to be in any sort of supervisory role at all. So it's kind of he's the best person.
You are breaking up on us a little bit, Ken. Audio. Oh, actually, you know what I need to do? As you are talking to us, just to ensure that our stream stays nice and consistent, I'm going to make sure locally I don't have anything in the way.
Sound to me.
We sound good to you?
Yep, sound good.
Okay, good. I forgot, as I am trying to work on other things, that my backup settings might be causing this. So let's pause any online backup going on right now to make sure that it doesn't interfere. Hopefully that'll open up bandwidths so that everything sounds good. So, also. So, there we go. Hopefully that will help. And continue on. You were telling us, Ken.
So yeah, I've changed supervisor, and that's good because I think it's going to be better for my PhD. This guy's already met with me twice in the past week and helped me fix some of the major problems that I had in my current paper, and that was great. So he's already technically contributed more than the other guy did in 3 years, so in 1 week, which was very, very, very useful, and I'm very appreciative. He's a lovely, lovely guy, this guy, and so it just shows that, you know, having a higher rank supervisor in terms of position within the university or department doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be more useful as a supervisor. It's actually, in my opinion, it's definitely preferable to have somebody with more free time who's able to actually meet occasionally, and has the expert. You should always have one supervisor who knows the expertise of the research as to where the research should go and possible research avenues, and another one who specializes more in the side of technical stuff. So, like, here is my code, here is my problem, here is the mathematical stuff
the
going
one
on.
that I can speak to you about the degree and everything that's going on with it, not just we want someone who can handle the management of how things work in the university and how, like, production, all that, as well as someone who can actually work with you on, like, and this is what you need to do things, right? Make sure your project's working, the code's working, all that.
Yeah, the sort of lower level and the higher level, right? That's pretty much it.
That makes sense.
So that's what I'm doing now, and it is good. Life is good. I'm actually much more relieved and much more relaxed just now than I have been in the past. Knowing that I've got some assistance and somebody sort of guiding me in the correct path, because you know, so that's one of the scariest things about PhD is you never know if you're going in the right direction, and it's just really good to have that support. But that's been my week entirely.
Yeah. Well, no, good to hear, and it's good that your trip was successful and you're back with us again. And so we are happy to have you here and successful at that. On our end, or here in the studio, as a Wild Hyde has joined us as well.
Hello.
We, not a whole lot to talk about that hasn't been geeky this week. Just got back this morning bright and early as I drove us back from a very quick run out to Nebraska to go and see some family. We had a not Christmas get-together where family essentially weren't able to get together over the holidays itself because everyone's schedules, and so we just kind of tried to throw a quick let's all get together a month later and do that. Oddly enough, this trip we didn't have any of my cousins really there. I only had one of my cousins show up. Pretty much it was my aunts and uncles, and so it was kind of an older side of the family on my mother's side. But it was nice because I got to take the opportunity to take Zenko, Akko, and Hyde out also to make it successfully back from an adventure in the cornfields. As I get lots and lots of crud from them about being a Nebraskan, and thus everything in my life must be related to corn in some way.
I excessively really put it on really heavy about all of the corn jokes. Then they actually took me on a tour of the corn plant, and it was actually really interesting and really exciting. They had bunches
one of the
of
things I
different.
talk about is that my family used to farm corn mostly and actually grow corn as well as raise cattle and hogs and things like that, all food type of consumption. And has progressed where sometimes being a farmer self most time being a farmer self is not a profitable business. You're usually lucky to just kind of keep along and keep going. And so my family...
That's interesting. Because here in the UK, it's either a case of if you're a milk farmer, you're poor. Because it's massively subsidized by the government to make it vaguely sustainable. And you're pretty much stuck in a case of if you try to sell everything, you'll go bankrupt. But if you continue the way you're going, you'll scrape by. So you must just keep going.
It's
but if you do
terrible.
pretty much anything else here, you're kind of a rich farmer. Farmers are kind of rich otherwise.
I say here, at least with the corn and such like that, it's also heavily subsidized. I think most regular food production in the U.S. is pretty heavily subsidized.
Yeah.
But for us, the thing that they got to learn is that my family transitioned from growing corn to being a service provider for corn in the area, because out where my family is, they added a Frito-Lay plant. So almost all the chips that come from Frito-Lay, at least west of the Missouri, as they like to tell us, have come through my family's kind of business, or at least through the Frito-Lay plant that is there in where they're at, Nebraska. But what my family now does is instead of actually farm the corn, they work as a service provider who cleans the corn. And so what they've done is they actually created a plant that helps sift through any of the raw corn. And when it did, it actually like sifts out any particulates that aren't the grain that you're after. In fact, my uncle was just telling me about a new piece of hardware they put into it that allows it to find any little bits of metal, because it's going through all the machinery, being the harvesting machines and things like that. So all the things from the trucks, the combines, the planters, anything that might get any kind of particulates in the grain that you're actually after, they have now equipment that can see the metal and basically sift it out very quickly, allow the machine to drop that little bit of corn that has the metal in it, and so that the majority of the grain you get in is that you actually keep is all going to be metal free, and other ways of cleaning it. And so in doing so, just new things like that. And I think they were somewhat surprised about, one, even that is part of my family's history in life and how much my family's had to do with food production in the U.S., but just seeing kind of behind the scenes of how some of our food makes it, I think that was part of it as well. So
that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, they get to actually see corn.
Yeah, dozens and dozens and dozens of jokes aside, it was actually really nifty to see. I had to stop making the jokes after that because I was like, oh yeah, you guys are actually pretty heavily, wrapped up in corn and the corn business. I should
yes, we're not just
tone
corn
it down.
huskers. It's actually a thing.
I have an Irish friend who has the exact same problem. We mock him a lot for being Irish and potatoes and stuff, and his family were actually very big in potato farming, and so he's like, "You're kind of hitting me on the nail on the head there, Ken."
Well, and admittedly, I take the jokes well. It's funny because they all kind of found themselves like, you're actually kind of serious about corn. It's like,
like all of the bags of different kinds of corn next to each other. Like,
so one of the things I got to see is
how many.
My family deals with a lot of new corns that are being produced, specialty corns, things like that, as there's always farmers trying to work on new blends. And so that's part of what we catalog, and we have all these different bags of samples of different kinds of corns from different fields, different farmers. And they just walked in the room and didn't realize you could even have that many different variety of corn. And that's just what
really
was
cool
being grown in the area. So anyhow, that aside, they got to see that. I did take them out. One of my cousins, we just happened to hit timing just right where they have some younger, not brand new, but younger pigs that were born. So went out to one of the family farms, and these pigs were maybe, a month old? I want to say something like that.
They were 3 weeks at that time.
3 weeks. Literally, I think there were 10 of them that they had. They said 2 or 3 didn't make it, and they had 10 that were still there. And so they had them back in a little pen under like heat lamps, and they were scampering back and forth around the little barn we were in. So they got to go pet pigs.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun.
Again, it was kind of that farm life thing they didn't realize I actually understand, because I guess City Boy Wayne, it wouldn't make sense. What are you guys talking about? Potatoes greater than corn? That is so wrong. Just because we don't make like corn fries, but you can have deep fried corn.
Yet
I will tell you that,
dude.
We have to take
corn fries.
But tonight.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I disagree with potatoes greater than corn, but that's a separate note. Beyond that, getting
together with our powers combined.
So got to see critters, things like that. Got to spend time with my family. They got to meet aunts and uncles, and we played pitch, basically card games, some rummy, things like that. Just kind of hung out. Looked at some old family photos. They got to see some photos of young Wayne. That
I took pictures.
Was that very small afro?
Back then, I don't even know if it was an afro or more just like wavy, weird hair. As I like to say, those were my frog days, when my face seemed like it was more squished and sideways than anything, and really weird smiles. I think someone noted like, oh god, that one is... So the worst part is that little baby photo, I guess, of me actually looks a lot like my grandfather.
You can hold it up to the camera.
And so you do not need to share those things. But regardless...
It was the funniest picture I could find, so I took a photo of it.
So they did see some of that, as well as just other family members and stuff, and just old pictures and photos of like... One of the things I got to note, and this is me being a little egotistical about my family, is that my uncles on my mom's side were all quite the handsome, strapping young men when they were back in their heyday. Like
they looked fly as heck.
And there's a photo famously of my grandfather, slightly younger, sitting next to the family plane that he used to fly. This is a little single-engine prop job with my mother, who's the oldest, and 2 or 3 of her brothers. Two of her brothers next to them, all wearing like, the guys are wearing like bomber jackets with the extra little fur cuff, around the neck. My mom's in this kind of like short trench stuff, and they just all look badass standing next to this plane, like they're all pilots kind of deal. And the uncles are all these tall men, farm boys and stuff like this, and just they all look really good. I forgot that picture. I looked at it again. I was like, well, no wonder they all, there's so many family members and kids around. Yeah, they did well. But anyhow,
you have a very large family.
They're decent size. So the one thing of note to talk about the road trip there and back, because it was really just a day kind of thing, is we actually had a contribution that is on the cusp of geeky, but I figured I'd put it in this section, of a podcast we listened to that actually Hyde had introduced myself to before, but now we introduced Zenko Nako to, called The Adventure Zone. And this is something, Ken, that I think you might appreciate. We'll grab the link and throw it into the chat for anyone who's interested. And essentially what this one had, The Adventure Zone is, and there's a lot of these different kind of podcasts out there, I would say. It's gotten popular. The big ones about, like, who is it? Tom Merritt? Oh, no, I forget. The voice actor who does the D&D one that most people... Critical Role, that show that a lot of people listen to and see the video cast of. Well, so this is a different one, and I will let Hyde just kind of introduce the premise of the podcast, and then I'll give you some of the details when we move on from there.
So basically, The Adventure Zone, it's 3 brothers and their dad. They all have a huge history in podcasting and radio. It's the McElroys. They have... One of them has experience playing 4th edition, and that's not the DM. So the youngest brother, Griffin, is actually DMing for the 2 older brothers and their father in their first real adventure in 5th edition. And so they play through the starter kit first, and it just becomes the most ridiculous, hilarious adventure, and it's so well done. Like, they're so good at radio, just rolling with everything, because it's, Griffin's first time DMing, like, all this great stuff, but they're just so good at rolling with things that it sounds like they've been doing it for years very quickly.
Even though they're kind of just stumbling through the mechanics of the game and such, but it's also nice because unlike, let's say, Critical Role, where Matt Mercer's kind of, he has his DM style and he's doing the rules the way he does, it's fun listening to these guys do it because, again, it's the brothers and their father playing together, in that he just rolls with everything so quickly that some things you're like, you know what, we're not even going to worry about food, stuff like that. That's dumb. I don't want to deal with that in this adventure. You're going to roleplay the other stuff. We're going to do the fun things.
Like, I don't want you worrying about how many arrows you have. You'll just always have arrows.
Every time you shoot, you collect the arrows. We're just going to accept that. I don't want to have to hear you guys say that every time we do it. And so he's really trying to get to the meat of the adventure itself and kind of them making decisions about how to play. And I think it's great because there's the 2 sides.
It's a respectful way to play.
Yeah, because you can either be so stuck on the rules that you're just trying to be as accurate as you can, or you can really just kind of play with it to make it so that you're telling an interactive story. And I think that all of those ever for RPGs and stuff like that, D&D, Pathfinder, you name the system, they've all been based more as a set of rules to kind of give you a framework of how to play the game. And I think the adventure's always been much more fun depending on how your DM rolls you through it. And that's what you should be focused on. And so with that, I have found that it's really entertaining to listen to this show because, one, they are just kind of rolling with it and the fun things they're doing. And unlike a few others ones, their characters, they're doing a better job of role-playing the characters themselves, I'd say, than a lot that I see. And their characters are silly. And I'll let Hyde kind of just give the premise of the main characters. It's worth watching, admittedly, the first episode, not to watch the entire episode.
Oh, yeah, so they have So the first episode they released was just about 2 hours long, and I actually made the mistake of making Zenko listen to the whole thing. They do have like an episode 1.5, which is a supercut, and it's about 50 minutes long, and it really just cuts down to the actual meat of doing everything. So come the first episode, they've already rolled out all of their characters, so it's not really all number based, but it's pretty.
That's good.
Yeah, it's not the dice.
It does
roll.
a good job of walking you through how you would play D&D, and so there's not really a lot of questions. So he has his siblings and his dad walk him through like what their characters are and introducing them, and their quick backstory that they've created for them and all this wonderful jazz. And it's really silly and funny, and I don't want to spoil it because it has me on the floor rolling every single time I listen to it. I had to stop listening to it at work because I would stop working because I was dying.
Yeah, and it really is fun just kind of hearing them go through the process. So I hear and see a lot of different kinds of role-playing things being streamed. I will say, especially because it's the audio podcast stuff that you can watch it anywhere, download it in traditional podcast style, to check out the Adventure Zone. And it's at MaximumFun.org. If you look at other shows, Adventure Zone. Check it out. Go back to the original and start watching from there. I find it to be really entertaining. So I wanted to throw it out there. It's something we did kind of back and forth on the road trip itself, at least there. And it seemed like we were all having a blast with it. So recommending that one is something we picked up from this road trip. All right, from there, though, as you guys check out the Adventure Zone, really I would say that's kind of all I had this week for non-geek related things. I haven't really watched any new shows or movies or things like that this last week.
Yet.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get back into it. And are kind of setting up things to be more crafty and go forward in some of that. So, with that, I think it's appropriate for us to go ahead and transition, because we're going to talk a little more news this show. Next to a bit of...
I'm a geek. Are you a geek? Geek cred, level up!
And let's talk about some things that have been going on that are a little more geek. Starting with you, Ken. What have you been up to that's been geek-related this week?
So I was trying to look it up because I can't seem to find it, but Kitten started watching something, and I've now seen maybe 1.5 episodes of this new. Okay. I don't know if it's new actually. This TV series, which is based on it's sort of like mythology mainly, and sort of history, maybe like Roman stuff, Greek stuff, Norse stuff. But they sort of like talk about these old stories like the Odyssey and all that sort of stuff. Okay. And they show some beautiful art. This reminds me a lot of D&D and Pathfinder actually, that sort of art style. But it's like vaguely animated, so you see and it's this beautifully I don't know how to describe it. It's beautifully narrated and inspection almost of the mythology and the history that it comes with, and it's a really, really interesting show, and I don't know the name of it, and it's kind of annoying because I tried Googling it. I was looking around for mythology, history, Amazon. I just can't see anywhere.
Okay.
I'll have to look around and mention that. I'll talk about it next week. I'll talk about it next week.
You will research and find and be able to let us in on what
I wasn't planning to talk about it, but then you just said it with TV shows, and I was like, oh, I'll bring up that one. No, what's the name of it? I was hoping it would come to me. But
you're just giving a prep for us to expect a new show that we may be interested in come next week. Nope, I like it.
Yeah,
you can work with that.
But I've been getting more into history recently. That's both that and whose podcast? There's another one I want to forget about. The Celtic genocide is what he did. Dan Carlin on YouTube does a fantastic, these big, huge podcasts. They're like 6 hours long each, and they're thoroughly researched. They're just packed full of really interesting facts about history. But he talks about it as a true story, and it's something that in the past maybe 2 months. Up until then, I'd always thought of history as one of the most mundane, dull subjects where it's just facts and figures, and people were just talking like, oh, well, it's because that's the way I was taught, right? I was always taught as like...
by boring people that didn't really like history?
Exam. Well, yeah, it was a case of you must memorize these like, I don't know, 47 like dates and facts for this exam and write a very short essay on it. And it was just the most dull subject ever. I hated history, and I always have thought it was extremely dull. But having both listened to Dan Carlin's podcast, a few of them now, in particular, the best one is the Celtic Holocaust. It's his 60th podcast that he's done. It's on YouTube as well, which is where I listen to it. And it's 5 hours, 59 minutes long.
Woo!
And it's absolutely amazing. It is so informative. And I learned a lot about my own history. I had no idea about what the word Celt means, where it came from. And it changed my whole view on the history of Europe and the Romans in particular, because it really talks about how, well, it's called the Celtic genocide for a reason, right? It talks about the fact that millions and millions of Celts were just wiped out by Julius Caesar, and it was seen as he's always seen as a hero in history. But the truth is, he was like in his own day basically Hitler. He just kept attacking neighboring countries, claiming it was because they were full of barbarians, and claiming it was just. We will all prevent them from attacking us. Every time he did this, he had a huge territory of people who may one day attack him and kept again and again. And that's how that describes it. I had no idea. I did think that Julius stuff.
Our internet's bouncing again with you. We're going up and down. That's right. It's one of those where you're mostly there and just slightly got a little like quiet right as you get into the meat of what you're trying to tell us about Julius Caesar. But at the same time, I understand what you're saying because we've run into the thing with history that the joke or kind of the reality that history is always written by the winning side, by the winners.
Absolutely.
So, as those scholars get in there and start to talk about the time frame and what it was doing and get kind of behind the scenes to let you know this is actually what was going on in the times, you start to get a better understanding of what's really going on and the stories behind it.
Well, he actually talks about that. He says one of the reasons we say that history is written by the winner is that most of the accounts of what happened with the Julius Caesar sort of wars was from Julius Caesar's own writing. He himself wrote it. You know, like if the actual like general who was the one the invading force literally is the one who wrote it. It wasn't just some monk who may have had miscellaneous relations with some minister in some foreign land, and there may be some bias. This is 100% biased, right? All that we know about it is majorly biased, and yet Julius Caesar writes in the third person frequently. Like he talks about himself as Julius Caesar, right? He is just.
That's right. Those people are always normal.
But he wrote it for his own homeland. He wrote it for people to actually see what conquest he went on.
It's his autobiography, right? But like told by him, written by him, edited by him.
Oh, spoiler alert, though, he does get stabbed in the end. So there's that.
I think he wrote that part though. I didn't.
He did.
You see the epilogue on his own writing that says until he was stabbed.
But it's
like
thoroughly
blood
interesting.
splatters.
I absolutely recommend that if you don't want to listen to a 6-hour thing, and I totally understand why. That's a long time. I didn't expect to like it. I thought it was going to be the most dull thing. But then Ken started watching 10 minutes of it while we were doing some painting or something like that the other week. And
then by the end of the second show, you had painted the entire house and didn't realize it had happened.
Like, easily we could have, but I ended up just listening to it in the car constantly, and when I was working, and it just enthralled me. It was just. He's also an amazing speaker. That's kind of the main things, that he is a true storyteller, and he actually goes into the reasoning behind it, which is really, really fascinating. I had no idea. Historically, a historian, funnily enough, has always been seen as a sort of scientific figure. But in the recent couple of decades, there are now two different branches you can go into with history. One is a historian of the arts, so you get a Bachelor of Arts degree at the end of it, and one is a Bachelor of Science. So if you go more towards the historical side, you are actually learning with the stories and the figures and the numbers and the culture and the history and all that stuff that make that's behind literature, etc., right? And art. Whereas the scientific side is more like you're actually digging into the bones and seeing literally the cataloging stuff and the people who came from there, etc. And he was attacking this from the side of the artistic viewpoint. So he's saying, here are the actual stories. Here are how they were portrayed back in the day. And it is absolutely fascinating. I can't recommend it enough.
Nice.
If you don't have time to listen to that, I instead recommend Dan Carlin's Talk at Google, because he also talks, he's invited to talk at Google about his podcast and the likes. He has some interesting political opinions, etc. that you can hear as well. He basically rejects all sides and says everything's wrong. Which is quite refreshing.
Those are always fun opinions to listen to. Nope. All that stuff you heard's rubbish. They're all wrong. This is the right answer because it's me.
The system in the US, right? I mean, it's kind of refreshing to hear, like, which side are you on? Instead, it's like, no, I reject this idea. I'm forging my own path. Thank you. I love that. I think it's great.
Nice.
Anyway, so that has nothing to do with my geek cred. I just sort of went on a tangent. So, let me bash on here. So first up, while I was driving down south and back up, obviously those long drives, you want to make the most of it, just like you guys did with your podcasts. I wanted to do the same. And so I listened to audiobooks. I actually subscribed to Audible and got a 3-month subscription again. And I picked up, first of all, Dresden Files Book 1 was the first one I listened to. So, and that was surely due to your recommendation last week. I thought to myself, I love Jim Butcher's other stuff. I don't have any reason not to have listened to this yet. I'm gonna give it a shot. Now, I enjoyed it, and it was good, and I want to continue, but I didn't enjoy as much as the Furies of Calderon. I think it's more to do with the genre than anything. I'm afraid to say.
Okay.
I think I just prefer pure fantasy over this sort of like intermingled fantasy with.
Yeah, this one is definitely a modern day fantasy. It's a world like we live in today where the fantasy of it, most people wouldn't believe actually exists. It's basically trying to say this actually exists today and how we live in life. And it's just there are a handful of people in the world that actually understand that magic is a real thing. And so that's kind of the premise of where the Dresden Files fits.
It's good that you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that really kind of set off to a bad foot. The very first page, I imagine, it was read out, right? It was an audible. I really disliked the first thing that they said was nowadays people don't have as much. They were closer to the truth in the past, yada yada yada. Due to the people were easier to believe in magic in the past. They don't nowadays. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And he goes on to say, and because everybody's religion nowadays is the religion of science, more people believe in science than ever before, and they have discarded all the truths. And it just went right under my skin, because I thought, you know what? This is an audiobook going across on digital media. This isn't me hearing it through prayer. Like, it's just a little painful to hear somebody say that.
What he's saying is basically that people are now being driven by science in general. Yes, religion still exists, but people accept that things like religion are speaking mostly about what we would consider, heaven, hell, angels, that kind of thing. But that's kind of the limit of what most religions get into. Where in the Dresden Files, they're talking about fantasy and kind of the things of truly like demons to potential angels, but things like werewolves and vampires and witches and that kind of thing, and that it's
make
real.
His wording any better though. His wording still perturbed me, and it just got off to a bad start because I didn't want to get. It's like starting off a book by saying, and we all know that the Earth is flat, and even if it's a fantasy.
No, but that's the thing. It depends on the book because that is absolutely kind of how it starts on. Discworld on all of Terry Pratchett's stuff, right? It's like everybody knows that the world's a flat disc that rides on the back of a bunch of elephants that are being carried on top of a giant turtle.
Tortoise, yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows that. That's how the universe works.
But Terry Pratchett is a comedian, right? He's largely comedy.
But
and
that's
two,
how
it's
his
its own
books
unique
start.
world. It's his own unique world. I don't know. This is clearly a reflection of the current world, and it was clearly his own thoughts on how I don't know how he sees the current world. It's sad that we have so much belief in science.
I don't know.
And that made me a little sad.
But it's from the perspective of Dresden, and once you start to understand who Dresden is, Harry Dresden, it really starts to kick in as to why he says it the way he does. Especially when he says, "And I'm the only wizard in town." The only professional wizard that's out there.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, what? And again, it is somewhat to kind of shock you into the world of like, what's going on? But then as you read through the story, you start understanding what's really happening. For me, it's really opened up and it's become a great fantasy world. It's fun that you bring this up, Ken, because as you saw, if you wouldn't have seen because you only got my image going, but Hyde on the side also has been reading the Dresden Files and has finished book 1 and 2?
Yeah, I'm currently on 3.
It's currently on book 3.
Cool.
And so
I'm looking forward to continuing on. I am enjoying it. I'm just saying that very first page did irk me as all. I just, like I said, it was just starting off on kind of the wrong step for me. I would have preferred it if maybe, I don't know, they gave a nod to science and said, but there's more benefits to the other side or something, and that would have really enjoyed, Or have you ever read the Harry Potter fan fiction, the extremely popular one?
I try to avoid most fanfic because it scares me.
Yes, me too.
I read lots of fan fiction. What's up?
It's called The Quantum Physics of Harry Potter. It's brilliant. It basically is the same world, but imagined of if instead of everybody instantly accepting that magic is just a separate thing and different entity, and the two worlds are just different worlds, pretty much, right?
Okay.
This goes on to say, that this person studied like theoretical physics before going to Hogwarts, and can explain pretty much everything that they're doing by technology and whatever else. And it's just a really interesting kind of funny take on it. It's like, obviously it's a world of fantasy, and that's totally fine. I have no problem with fantasy books. I love fantasy books. Don't get me wrong. I love magic, and I love magic in fiction. I absolutely adore it in fiction. but it's a sort of whimsical, funny look on it, and it's the kind of fan fiction you don't normally read. Like I sort of agree with the other guys here. I don't normally read fan fiction, but this was particularly insightful, and I really enjoyed the viewpoint of it. So anyway, I've read the first Dresden Files book. It was enjoyable. I got to say, the guy who read it out, I found his voice a little annoying at times. Not because of his fault, I would say. It's more how he sees Dresden to be, the main character. The way he reads him out is very like sighing and I suppose, but the thing is, I don't mind that if that's with him normally. But even when he describes him as being panicky or literally just died at one point, like, and he's just been revived, he's still like this. I suppose. Like, do you not have adrenaline? Do you not have panic in your voice? Why do you always sound the exact same?
Hey, I talk about constantly how the problem with some audiobooks is not the book itself, it's whoever's acting it. It's the actual narrator, because when I first started listening to Harry Potter, it was audiobook, and I forget the person who narrates the majority of them. I quite enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the narration he had. And I comment that not one of my favorite Audible readers, but one that I've enjoyed is Will Wheaton, because he's done both Red Shirts and Ready Player One. I still enjoy the books, but I still think he's got a bit of a limit on his range, where I've heard people who can act out multiple roles, male, female characters very well, have distinct voices for all these kind of things, right? And so it can be a telling thing, or it can really control kind of your experience of an audiobook.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
it's an art form, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely is. And it's one that I couldn't do it. I mean, people hear me read emails on this show, and I doubt you'd want to listen to that for 18 hours or something like that. No one wants to hear my voice for that long. I'm surprised people listen in for the half of a 2-hour show that I'm talking. But in this case, I was looking on Audible, and I see that it looks like the narrator's James Marston, or was it Marsterners? So not Masters, Marsters, is the one who reads the Dresden Files. I was just trying to double check as you said that it wasn't Jim.
No, I didn't think it was, because it was a different company who they were advertising at the start, so I knew it was like a professional guy.
Okay, good.
But otherwise, it was a really interesting world. I love the sort of nods to other fantasies that were in it. I like the range of monsters that were available throughout. Some of whom you never are explained, and that hints at a future. Yeah, it hints at a future of more exploration of this fantasy world, and I really like that. I love the range of his weaponry and the fact that it's not just magic wins in the end. I love the fact there's mainly his own guile and his own sort of investigation that comes to the answers. While his own powers are somewhat formidable, he is absolutely limited, especially by his own ethics. And I like that. I like the fact that he's limited. I don't know if I like how they portrayed women in this series so far. Admittedly, it's through the eyes of Dresden, right? So you can't complain too much because it's just the way that the character sees women, and that's what you're reading it from. But the first thing he describes every woman by is how beautiful she is or not. And
no. Don't worry. It comes from, again, Dresden's perspective that he will admit that he's somewhat chauvinistic, and he comes from an era where he believes in a certain type of chivalry.
Yeah, I heard that.
That plays into how he sees the world. It doesn't always work for him. In fact, often gets him in some level of angst or trouble, depending who he's working with. But he does talk to how that his view of the world plays into how he makes decisions and how sometimes they're bad. But continue on. I can't wait till you met a few other characters.
Well, that's a good thing. I suppose there's a good thing that I actually. Sometimes when I read a series, I either fall in love with a character or I absolutely hate them and there's some kind of anti-hero. With Dresden, I do feel that it's a bit deeper, and I have a bit of both. I really appreciate his logical style and his the way he goes through and mulls over information. But at the same time, I kind of dislike his personality in some respects as well. So he is a complex character, and that is in the end a good thing. I wouldn't want to completely like a character. So that's nothing but
not like your view of Scott Pilgrim or anything, right?
I hate Scott Pilgrim. That's nothing but a thumbs up to Jim Butcher for being able to write a character that's complex enough to both like and dislike. That is not an easy thing to do, right? Okay, so other than that, I also am partway through the Briar King. So this is something that Kitten's been trying to get me to read for years, and I do mean years. And so I figured, you know what, like Wayne suggested Dresden Files, and I'm doing that. It's only fair I also do the Briar King.
Oh no, you could totally just go off of my suggestions. Why listen to your wife?
Okay, Dresden. So I quite enjoy the Briar King so far. It's a lot more difficult to read. Now, some books like Dresden Files, I can kind of like, when I'm driving, you know, obviously you're distracted occasionally by the fact you're driving. Sometimes you have to look around at traffic and stuff, and so you're not really paying attention.
To other stuff? Yeah.
And with the Dresden Files, I could fall back in no problem. Like I was half listening and I got what was going on. You know, there's not much nuance or subplot or I didn't need to concentrate on every single sentence. In the Briar King, it's written in sort of like an old king speech, or at least that's how they often speak. And so I'm sort of really struggling to try and listen to each sentence, translate it into something I understand on the fly, and then continue on. Because it's an audiobook, I don't have the time to stop and consider each one, right? So I'm trying to do that at the same time as driving. So I found that quite a difficult audiobook to listen to. Maybe it's my own lack of vocabulary, or maybe it's my own lack of just general grammar. But regardless, I couldn't really get too far through it without occasionally getting lost and having to pick up as we go. Not only that, but it's kind of like Game of Thrones. There's a lot of characters, and
those are always tough.
After a few chapters, like they were saying, he would start a new chapter by saying Stephen went to da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da, and you'd be like 6 paragraphs down before you realize who it's talking about. And I was like, oh yeah, Stephen's the priest, right? The wannabe priest. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, I did that in Game of Thrones. I absolutely did, because I listened to that on audiobook. And there were so many characters that I would be halfway through a chapter before I was like, oh, those two guys. Gotcha. Oh, it's terrible.
Thankfully, however, none of them have just died randomly as soon as I start to know them or like them. Yeah. So, you know, it's not too Game of Thrones in that sense. So that's been the 2 audiobooks I've listened to. I've continued to play Buried Bones, which I wanted to mention briefly, because that's a really fun game, the app I mentioned last week.
I grabbed that,
did you have a chance to...
Yet. I think I acquired it, but I don't think I've started it. Yeah, I have it, and when I was going to try to play it, I was still in either Nebraska or something, or truck stop somewhere, and there was no internet, and said, you can't play until you've connected at least once. And I was curious, and so I started it and just said, nope, no internet, you don't get to play yet. So it's on my phone, and I do hope to look into it.
Well, like I said, I do highly recommend it. It's good fun, and the good thing about it is it's the kind of game that there's no... you can drop it and pause it at any point. Unlike many games out there, you can't actually just stop playing at any point you feel like, and that's a rarity these days, I find. You can always come back to it. And the other thing, it's got a model that I really like for how to support the developers. I didn't realize this until this week, but so it does have this sort of system where you can buy currency in the game that's not available otherwise, and it helps do things like revive you and such to help you progress. And you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but you can. Whatever. But it also has ads, and that usually annoys me with many games out there. But the difference is that as soon as you buy even the smallest amount of currency, which I think was 79 pence, and considering through Google Awards I already had £1, 2 pence available from just doing those surveys, I was like, this is free for me, and it removed all the ads, which is really nice. So all video ads, all side banner ads, all disappear as soon as you make the most simple small purchase. And so I did, and honestly, I didn't even use the currency because it's for a part of the game I don't really care about. So I just had to get rid of the ads and to support the developer because they deserve it. And I really hope that does help them get funding to fully translate it from Japanese over, because that'd be good.
Gotcha. Nice.
Lastly, I wanted to talk more about my Pathfinder campaign. But I am concerned that we have guests again today, and I don't want to end up taking half the show talking about this campaign, because I have a feeling I easily could and just might. So I think I'll pass over again for some time in the future.
Okay, it's up to you, Ken, because it is interesting to hear, especially since you're crafting and creating your own campaign as you go forward with Pathfinder with you and your wife. So I am always interested to hear how that's going to continue forward. But with that coming over, I don't have a lot to contribute to Geek Cred this week. I do want to get into what's been going on in the news and some of the articles I've seen in the last week or so. But I was going to give an update generally on 3D printing. I do have currently, I'm back to a point where all 3 of my printers are working again. It's odd that I almost am on like a every other week status on which 3D printers, if any of my 3D printers are working. Whereas I think Akko has had much more success in that majority of your 3D printers seem to constantly be working. You just have one that's a little finicky.
One's just being very temperamental. I just have to dial it in. Because the table's not leveled, I have to dial in the leveling.
Or just level so that everything can properly print the first layer down every time you play it. And currently with the Robos that we're running, the R1s, you kind of have to get in there and tweak the Z-axis screws a little bit to make sure you're just at the perfect bed height to make it run. And I will say that now that my R2 is running again, that having the little laser ranger that does it works so good. I can pretty much, as soon as it starts printing, I don't have to worry about the layer height or where it's at. It adheres every time. So I'd like to get the R1s dialed in to that level. But so I do have 3D prints running again. I had 2 that are still running that I got started before we left to and came back from Nebraska. And so it's like, whew, that's a little bit of a risk in there, but they're still going. They may be finished here shortly after the show. I'll have to check them. I also, and this print's kind of multiple pieces here, off the R2 to test it. I've been printing kind of geekdom. I love me some geekdom. And this one in particular is currently hollowed out and doesn't have face in there because they're sitting here next to me on the table. But from Super Mario Brothers World, a Bullet Bill. And so,
that's so cool.
Yeah, you can see like the open mouth and eyes on it. That I have the eyes and mouths kind of printed out here where teeth and stuff's to fit into it.
Very nice.
And such. And so I will hopefully be assembling this today. And it's one of these things with 3D prints I've really loved. This model, they set it up so you can kind of get the stuff involved where it's actually 2 pieces where you print, basically it's got a screw-on base that goes to it, and it just fits so well right off the printer where it screws right in. And that really makes me happy that people know make designs that solid. I love that. It's interesting too because I've been getting more reports of so many friends as copies in there saying that she should get a 3D printer. I know so many people today that are picking up printers. I had a friend just recently comment that he got his first one. I want to say it's either one from the local candy store or from Monoprice online. I forget which one he did, but one of these little $200 or $300 printers. And he got it specifically to start printing lightsaber bits because he works and does Saber Force, Saber Legion. He's in the competitive lightsaber world.
You mentioned it before, yeah.
Yeah, and so with that, he's actually picked his up specifically to buy hilts or to build and print hilts and different pieces for them. And so I was like, oh, that's really specific and cool. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Whereas, for me, it's all toys and random nonsense and maybe costuming eventually. And with Akko, it's mostly like terrain for miniature gaming and stuff like that. It's interesting to see whatever anybody does with their 3D printers. So that's my current status. So the cleaning I had to do is on my Kickstarter version of my R1. I had to go through and clean it all out again. I had to disassemble and clean the front end on it and kind of reassemble it because it had gotten clogged after, I forget what happened, but it was printing too close to the bed and so it wasn't able to extrude and thus it clogged itself and it's terrible. But got that cleaned up, and then the R2 was having multiple issues. The challenges of kickstarting anything, in that apparently this time it was the power supply was starting to wonk out and was kind of like flashing a little bit, and we're talking to people I was getting where it would start printing and then just fail after like an hour, and it was really getting frustrating. Like, okay, come on guys, this is not my fault at this point. It's not anything I did. Talked to customer support, and again, Robo's been really good with their customer support for me. I've almost rebuilt this entire printer now from the parts they've sent me under warranty. But in this one, they sent me a new power supply, and it is significantly different than the little like cast-off Xbox one it looked like they had originally. This is like a solid brick of a power supply, external one. But it seems to be working. It's been printing at least the last 2 prints successfully, so there's a fix, as well as changing out the ceramic heater on the end of it. Then the other R1 I've had has been working like a champ. The other thing I have that I just got Kickstarter is my vacuum form. I've been talking about that one a little bit. Desktop vacuum form that I also broke. This one was me. In that, I don't know, I'm terrible with things. It's not that this construction's shoddy. There's just a piece that's probably the weaker link. No! Why did you get there so fast? Bad copy. Don't join in yet. Just on your pre-recorded self that I put in and forgot to look at the time. Because I jumped over from dysfunctional deviations too fast today.
No, with 24 exclamation marks in the back of it. That's right. That's how smart I am.
Yeah, I should. Do I have that? I could totally drop that in on myself.
That'd be the first drop-in we've had in like months.
I know,
if
and
you do.
I don't think I have that drop-in currently set up. I should totally put a few of the drop-ins back in because that was a very noob move of me. Everybody, I apologize. But it's a good sign that it's. Oh, actually, shoot, we have like 10 more minutes. Why?
Double noob.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, this is me going so close to it that I screwed it up and went directly into. So I'll put the back in and we'll get it so that Copy can put us back into the show in between here in a second. Wow, I failed that. But the vacuum form is put together in such a way that when I pulled the arm down to seal onto it, one of the screws I broke. And that screw actually holds kind of the arm assembly together. It's just a little notch in there. And so now it's just not even pulling down fully to thing. So I was able to remove that screw mostly. Part of it's still in there. I kind of think I have to take a drill to clean it out. And in the meantime, I took another one of the screws I had, this kind of replacement piece, and kind of partly screwed it in as far as it would go. So it's connected, just not secure. And now in order to make the prints work, I'm having to pull down the arm. And then as it comes down, take my gloved hands and put it over the tray and kind of push it down the rest of the way to make sure it's sealed so that the vacuum actually does suck the plastic down. Because I failed like on 3 or 4 sheets of plastic in a row where I was just like, what is going on? Before I finally figured out it wasn't fully sealing. And then I finally got a vacuum out. I should have grabbed it, but it was a little one of a skull mask I had done before that it looks fairly good. I'm starting to learn like the right thickness of plastic to use, things like this. So like any new hobby of mine, any new piece of tooling I have to learn as I go. So we'll see how that goes.
No, I think it's really impressive the fact that you're still going with this and you surround yourself with people who are interested in it as well, and you're still investing time and effort and money, I suppose, into doing this because you know what, it's a hard thing to learn. There's a whole lot of stuff to do, and you're clearly getting met with a lot of failures along the way. But hey, that's the path to success, right? So good for you for keeping up, dude.
I have some level of, I don't know what you call it, self-loathing. I don't know. A willingness to experience these things that are not always positive, and I guess stick with it enough to at least keep trying. It's benefited, as Akko's told me in the past, with the 3D printing stuff, that I've gone through enough of the pain and trials that as he was getting into it, I was able to share a lot of those stories up front. It's like, oh, hey, ha! As you get into this, make sure you don't do this or that. When this happens, you're ready with this.
Well, it's important. It's an important thing to remember because it's still hobbies. It really is. It's not to the point where everything's as, set it and forget it like a desktop printer or something.
Yeah, I keep saying it is not an inkjet.
Like an inkjet.
Printer. No.
It's a labor of, I wouldn't always say love. It's love-hate. Because they do start acting up in strange ways that you then just have to figure out what's going wrong and fix it.
God. And I will tell you, the forums are your friends. Just like, where we were talking about subreddits and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, and what is it? Copy's saying I might get into Worbla if I can contact my faraway friends who got into the Masters Division for it. I just recently started working on projects with Worbla.
Yeah.
And how's that experience gone?
It's been interesting. It's a lot of what I expected it would be. It's a lot more sculpting, but I've run into some interesting things that I didn't know or I didn't think that I would have to use to try to get things smoother and try to build things up. I had a way that I thought it would all work, and then there was a very different way that it actually did work.
Yes, the learning through you can learn a lot through YouTube videos and from other tutorials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's always a point where once you get hands-on with whatever it is you're trying to do, that the reality of it comes out.
Yeah, I still have to go back and fix a lot of it. I had it perfect when it was flat, and then I tried actually bending it around to make it a wearable thing and kind of smushed a lot of it, so I gotta go back and fix that all now.
But yeah, so it's one of those things, by all means, get into these different things, research you can, but be prepared that any of these kind of, especially hobbyist type of activities, where you can't just go get a commercial grade whatever, there's some learning that will be involved with it, and potentially some heartache, I guess, or some things that would have been wonderful and almost were wonderful and didn't quite work out how you quite hoped they would. Just so be prepared. For me, it's like I went, especially with my first 3D printer, I went probably near a year without it running because there was just so many little challenges with it, and I lost interest in trying to troubleshoot it all. And it took me helping Akka with some of his printers and getting my other one running and going that I started getting interested back, where I've been able to get them all running again. But it took me some time before I was willing to really figure it out. And so just be aware with that with any of these new, especially the kind of crafting hobby stuff on the side. Like if I ever make a mini forge in my backyard or something like that.
I've done that, by the way. It's pretty easy.
Oh, it's easy. But it's the things where you start forging things and that's how you do this.
Also, if you're gonna melt tin cans, make sure you get a good mask.
What?
We
you don't
we
want to
did.
sit down range from that and just
We
smell it?
did, but even with a mask, it's gonna be awful. Well, it just reminds me. I mean, Zenko herself is gonna be fixing her 1960s Elna machine, pure metal, that the motor decided to die because motor brushes exploded. It's been another journey, but once that gets all fixed up, she'll probably post a video on how to do it, how to open it up and fix it, because we unfortunately couldn't find any on YouTube. That's where the fun really starts, when you can't really find.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we take for granted now how much information is available out there. That when you
Good for you guys to put that video up though, because that's exactly, somebody's got to do it then, and that's just going to say, I'll do it then. I'll pick up the need.
Yes. No, we try to keep.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's because at this point we had to look and find the original repair manuals, not the instruction manuals, but like mechanics repair manuals for the machine. And looking at those instructions, it's kind of terrible. It's like it doesn't quite match
mechanics
up.
manuals from the 60s.
Yeah, you just kind of have to
beautifully crafted with pictures and meant for the layman to figure out.
Yeah, you just gotta know, I guess, or have already disassembled these things. So for a first time, a complete novice, it's a little challenging. So we'll try to get some of that up there, because frankly, she loves the machine. They don't make them like they used to. Pure metal construction can power through like 5 layers of leather without really complaining, where you can't even, a modern machine can't really do leather. It's just kind of
you're lucky to get through like one seam of two edges of leather put together. So yes. No, it's something that we're all trying to to add to the group knowledge of how to do things, which is really good. And so yes,
that's good.
There's that. But yeah, that's again just advice whenever you're doing any of these kind of projects. And I'm okay, I guess, being someone on the cutting edge. I like technology enough to take that risk. And I enjoy that initial kind of learning of something new that most people don't get to do. At the same time, I hate it because every time it's not working, it frustrates me to no ends. And so there's that as well. But with that, we are going to take a break, and then we will come back, and we're going to talk about a little bit of news this week. And so hopefully you'll be ready for what's been going on. Feel free to email us in to the show at showx@vtwproductions.com so that we can hear all about what you've been doing for Geek Cred, as well as feel free to challenge us with what news articles you've seen that you'd love to hear our opinion on. So just send us an email during the break and we will get to it right after this. We're going to be listening to one of my OC Remix songs, as I've been doing as of late. This one's particular is a mix from Wind Waker called Her Smile, I believe, from Hot Freaks. And so check this one out. We'll be back just in about 4 minutes if I can hit the right buttons in the right order to make this all work the way it's supposed to this time. So with that, you're listening to Show X on VTWProductions.com, and we'll be right back.
Send in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com.
I felt I'd known forever, her name in every song, her smile in every summer, across the continent, we'd go on adventure, but now we are apart. Oh, I still picture us
to Show X on btwproductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. And as I look in, I don't see any new emails. So guess what? You're done. No more Geek Cred. It's time for us to talk instead about news and such. So we're going to do one of these and say...
Technology, news, and more today on the Geekoscope.
The Geekoscope! Alrighty. So, kicking things off here, Ken, I see you're already throwing things into the notes to see what we'll have this week. But I've got one that I wanted to kick off right away just because I thought it was interesting. Although mine are kind of a series of that I will stick together. So there's a couple articles all with one topic in mind. And that is a slight update on net neutrality. So we've talked about net neutrality here on the show multiple times because we believe it is something you, as a user of the internets, should care about. And so the articles I'm bringing up today start off with two articles talking specifically about one of the states here in the United States. This one being Montana. And so what does Montana have to do with net neutrality, you say? Well, very specifically, they are trying to fight against the government mandate about it. And so, coming to us from SFGate from San Francisco, it says Montana mandates that net neutrality for all state contracts. Essentially, in Billings, Montana, the Associated Press reports that Montana on Monday became the first state to bar telecommunication companies from receiving state contracts if they interfere with internet traffic or favor higher-paying sites or apps, under an order from the governor, Steve Bullock, intended to protect so-called net neutrality.
Good.
Says the Democratic governor's order came after Federal Communications Commission last month repealed rules enacted in 2015 that had a more tightly regulated companies such as AT&T and Verizon. Commission members said the repeal was needed to ensure the government maintains, quote, a light touch in its oversight of the internet. But critics such as Bullock contend change will hurt consumers and make it harder for startups. Quote, there have been a lot of talk around the country about how to respond to the recent decision. Bullock said in his announcement in order before a group of computer science students in Helena said it's time to actually do something about it. And it also says that attorneys from more than 20 states and the District of Columbia have sued to block the repeal. State legislatures in New York, California, and elsewhere have introduced bills promoting net neutrality, but Bullock is the first governor to take action, according to the National Conference on State Legislators. Yes. All right. So between that one and the article from Ars Technica, basically saying the same thing, and that one saying, FCC, you can't stop us from protecting net neutrality. Through these discussions, it's basically stated that, let's see, it's part of it in the Ars Technica one says the Montana fact sheet continues saying that the ISPs are trying to have it both ways too. During the previous administration, ISPs argued that the FCC lacked the power under Title II to preempt certain state laws that ISPs favored. Now under Title I, ISPs are claiming broad preemptive authority by the FCC. Both can't be true. And so essentially what we hear is companies trying to play both ends of a thing to make as much profit as they can.
Killed him. I mean... Sorry.
I can translate that a little bit from the resident lawyer here. So basically, what it is they're trying to say under the previous administrations, they're trying to say that hey, federal laws, it's up to the states. Yes, the states have all the power here, and now they're switching it around and saying no, it's good old feds that states you can't do anything. It's the federal government that says what goes. And so they're trying to play both sides there, which is fairly common as far as techniques go. The question is, what will actually sort out? Will the regulations that the FCC has mandated, will those actually now supersede states? And that's something that's different from the attorney generals who are trying to sue, and that will be fought out in the years to come. And Montana's actually, in my opinion, doing things the smart way because they're not actually directly contesting the FCC rules. What they're doing is they're just saying, hey, you're not getting money if you don't have these policies. Yeah. And that's actually the really smart way to do it. They're just saying you're not going to get some pretty juicy state contracts, which will sting.
Yeah, it'll make it a lot harder for certain companies to get anything in that state, which is neat. So that's something that I like seeing because that's actually, to me, more that grassroots effort of local politicians paying attention to what their constituents actually are asking for. Because what we've heard is there was the outcry against what the FCC did against net neutrality, repealing it, was massive. And even if you took in all of the fake calls and stuff coming in, the overwhelming support of the rules that were already in state far outweighed anything talking about getting rid of net neutrality. And all the answers they said of why they should have repealed it were basically in favor of a handful of corporations and never in favor of community good. And with these very loose ideals of, oh no, it'll help companies and stuff in the future somehow, somewhere.
It will help companies because they'll be getting a lot of money from you paying to, get their internet.
Even more to be able to get to the places you already got. Well, so what's interesting is, along with this, at the same time, Netflix recently reported, or an article came out about Netflix because they were one of the first real loudmouth proponents of maintaining net neutrality.
Understandably, though, right? There's obvious reasons as to why they'd be interested in keeping it.
And so with that, they were always very loud about it. Well, apparently they've been quiet lately. And this coming from San Francisco Gate, their local paper, saying Netflix's success turns net neutrality into an afterthought. So an interesting perspective. It says, Netflix once fought fiercely on net neutrality, fearing that its online video service would suffer if internet providers were free to discriminate against it. But now that it boasts one of television's largest audiences, Netflix isn't spending much time worrying about the demise of the government rules that once protected it. With millions of subscribers still flocking to its service, Netflix figures internet providers are unlikely to do anything that might alienate large numbers of their own customers who also turn to Netflix for trendy shows such as Stranger Things, The Crow, and Black Mirror. Netflix's fortress is so strong now that net neutrality has become background noise for them, says their insights analyst Daniel Ives. And it says the Trump-era federal FCC repealed net neutrality rules in mid-December. Those regulations banned internet providers like Comcast, AT&T, and Verizon from slowing or blocking customer access to apps and sites, or from setting up paid fast lanes for favored companies. The rules that have been a big deal for smaller startups, as Netflix once was. But now that Netflix has more than 117 million subscribers worldwide, including nearly 55 million in the U.S., according to the company's fourth quarter earnings report released Monday, the service picked up 8.3 million of those subscribers, a quarterly record, in the October to December period last year. That included a gain of 2 million in the U.S. Essentially what they're saying is that due to Netflix being so big and being one of the applications or uses that almost everyone who uses the internet has, that they themselves are maybe not as concerned about the net neutrality rulings as they once were.
That's not wrong, but so when I read that, I think
it's not wrong. It's kind of trashy, though.
They're kind of they're fluffing, or they're puffing themselves up. To me, it smacks as a bluff, because if you remember back to some of the earlier fights Netflix had fights with Comcast, actually.
Yep.
Earlier on, where Comcast was saying, what the heck's going on? You're just taking up so much bandwidth. You're being ridiculous. You should be paying us. And Netflix actually knuckled under and ended up paying up because they lost a direct contest with Comcast. So the question is now, are they trying to roll the dice again and, do a bluff here? Because really, if the ISPs, really wanted to put them down, they really could. Well, they could crush them.
It's the challenge that unfortunately ISPs are still given somehow control of our access. Instead of just being there to provide some services to allow you to actually get in there, it's this whole level of they can kind of do what they want because nobody's holding them accountable, especially with net neutrality being rolled out. And so,
I don't know how this all stands up, considering, and I know two facts that can't both be true. I know that one, I've been told recently that Netflix are actually working at a loss. They're actually losing money each month. But then, why would they possibly be puffing up and saying, "Oh, we don't mind paying," or whatever, making ties with these ISPs we have to because we can afford it?
Well,
that doesn't seem to both make sense.
Well, so there's a challenge to it because it's a question of what are they really doing. And the way these articles make it out, they make it sound like Netflix is now working the other direction. I disagree. I think Netflix is probably just not actively fighting the battle. That they're so concerned with just doing this new content, all these amazing new shows they're bringing, and things like that, that they're just they're not trying as hard to fight net neutrality because they're maybe not suffering from it directly. I would probably say that if you were to ask anyone at Netflix whether they think that net neutrality is something they care about, they would say yes. Mm-hmm. It's just whether they're going to put their money effort behind that.
Right.
I appreciate Babs. Thank you for linking the 2014 article from the New York Times that basically supports what Akka was just saying about Comcast and Netflix reaching a deal on the service. If you follow that link, it basically says that this is back from 2014. Comcast, the country's largest cable and broadband provider, and Netflix, the giant television and movie streaming service, announced an agreement Sunday, back in 2014, in which Netflix will pay Comcast for faster, more reliable access to Comcast subscribers. So they did do that at some point, just to recall. And that one, it was said they agreed to buy time. Let's see. Oh, that was different talks about the actual money behind it.
Right.
And so that's my thought on this article in general, is it's not necessarily that Netflix is now in favor of getting rid of the FCC ruling on net neutrality or the rules that the government was putting in place, but instead, it's just not currently on their path to spend a lot of time and effort on it compared to other business practices.
And in terms of like loss and profitability, they're probably operating at a quote-unquote loss right now, and the reason why is if you look at some of their business strategy recently, they have really doubled down on trying to create content and acquire content. So they've made massive investments in taking out loans and
$1.1 billion a month they're making off of their worldwide subscriber base.
So they're spending so much money on becoming content creators instead of just distributors.
It is likely that they're doing that now.
They're building a massive network on their own, so they have other fish to fry.
Also, I'm sure you guys noticed that they raised their monthly subscription price
Yes.
too.
They did again, yes.
It's not really.
It's now, well, and since I'm paying for HD streaming now, or Ultra HD streaming, so I can get 4K.
Yeah, me too.
Mine's now $15
Costs
a
extra.
month. Yep.
Yeah.
An extra
Yeah, it was
$5 a month.
£15. You
Just
do.
throw in that extra
Ooh.
cash that they did
Hey,
raise that, so they
hey.
are looking for more money at least to
Yeah,
get out
they
of
are.
what
Well,
they are putting.
And Ken, you say £15. Come on, what's the pound really doing right now?
Well, nowadays it's not that big a difference, I guess. But still.
Well, I keep saying it's like I need to come visit sooner than later because my dollar will finally almost match the pound or come close.
Yeah, it'll be half the price of last time you came, almost literally.
Yeah, almost half of what it costs.
wow.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yikes.
yeah.
Pound's doing pretty poor compared to how it
Yeah,
used to.
it's been improving in the past few months, but it's still way down compared to 5 years ago.
But it helps them in
Way,
a way
way, way
because in
down.
the past, every time they buy a game, it's equal pound to dollar when they offered on Steam or like subscription services, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's $60, but it's also 60 pounds. And that used to mean, oh, you mean like $89? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. There have been more than a couple games I have purchased for somebody and gave them a Steam code for in another country that worked great, and they just PayPal'd me the money because it saved them like $20 or $30
Nice.
just because of conversion rate differences. That is so
Yep.
ridiculous. It's digital distribution. WTF?
Well, you remember when I
That's a
first
whole
went to the
nother fight.
US? Well, no,
Yes.
not when I first went. When I went through for the wedding.
Yes.
I remember we went to that huge store and we looked at the TVs, and I said, "Oh my God!" At the time, it was like full HD. That was a big
Yeah.
thing back then. And I was like, "Oh my God, a full HD TV for less than $1,000? How is that possible?" Whereas here, you'd be spending like £1,400, which was equivalent of like $2,000+, and at the time, it was insane.
Well, and the
I-
largest TVs I saw over there when I visited your place a year later were like 42-inch. Were like
Yep.
the biggest TVs that were costing somewhere in the range of like almost $2,000.
Yep.
Like, this is dumb. Here you can get, you can get a 65-inch full HD TV or 4K TV for like $700.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah,
That's what I
unfortunately,
was saying.
Copy, I
It'd be
think-
cheaper for
I
me to
think
go
that-
over there, buy a TV, and come back
and
with
fly
it.
back. So, Ken, you should do that. We'll have a VTW con here in Colorado with you here, so I can take you up to the mountains. We can go drinking. But yes,
That sounds good. I can actually get drunk. That'll be good.
Oh
With
yes,
the-
you will. And there's,
Yeah.
and gosh, Copy, that sucks. I didn't realize that they did that. now.
Altitude.
Ah, that's interesting. Apparently, she's saying that Steam doesn't allow those kind of transfers anymore, and that you get an error when you try to gift games
What?
to different regions that have a huge price difference.
What?
Oh.
Region
Interesting.
locking.
So mine admittedly,
is
mine wasn't
licensed
a gift.
distribution.
I just gave them the Steam key, and they put it in themselves instead of me gifting the thing to them. But that's curious to see, because that
That might be
sucks,
locked out
'cause-
as well, though. It depends.
Well, we did it a lot back in the day, so they might go figure. They're a big company; they probably caught on. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you could have made businesses doing that. Because admittedly, the people who bought it from me, they almost left me like an extra $5 tip on doing it most times. Because like, this is still so much cheaper here. It's like, all right. So I could see them doing that. Damn it.
It's not in physical sales anymore.
So-
it's just digital.
I know,
It's just license distribution.
It's a license you download at the same.
You're basically, it's a long-term rental. You're not really getting anything. That's
so dumb.
I have my own rant about Steam.
Yeah. Okay, so the final piece that I want to bring up about net neutrality, I don't know if Ken, if you've seen this, but I definitely want to put it out there for everyone else to check out if you haven't, is there is a commercial that was released by
I've seen
Burger King, of all companies, specifically targeting net neutrality. Threw a link there into the IRC for anyone who wants to check out the news article I grabbed it from my favorite service, News 360. But this one posted by the Denver Post showed it, and you can just go to YouTube and look up Burger King net neutrality. But they made basically they did a hidden camera kind of video of people going into a Burger King where they were going to buy their Whopper. And in doing so, they made up 3 different price points for a Whopper. They had a Whopper that, let's see if they have the picture here. Nope, it's on that board. Essentially, they had an MBPS, which is, what was it? Making burgers per second.
Per second, yeah.
Yes. And they had 3 prices for the Whopper. They had the the slowest Whopper, which was $4.99, the normal menu price. They had the midline, fast Whopper, which was $12.99. And then they had the ultra fast Whopper, which was $25.99. And essentially, if you watch the video of it, and it's good nobody lost their mind completely, although people were very frustrated because they didn't know what was happening. And the employees that did it they were good just keeping in line with what was
Things calm, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine all the soccer moms coming in there going,
people were
screaming
mad.
their head off.
People were mad. But basically, they just said, it's like, no, you want a Whopper? Awesome. I can give it to you in 10 minutes. People are like, wait, what? Yeah, it'll be 10 minutes. And then they'd see someone else walk up, or someone order a chicken sandwich, like, oh, here's your chicken sandwich. They're like, wait, why did he get it right away? It's like, and someone finally asked in one of the video parts saying, are there any Whoppers made? He's like, yeah, there's Whoppers ready. Are they being told? It's like, yeah, no, I could put it in the bag right now. It's like, then why don't you give it to me? It's like, because you bought the slow Whopper. And so that means I can't give it to you for another 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And just seeing people have to try to figure out how to process that was great. And in the end, after they go through the whole process, how people reacted, they did let them know what was going on and that it was about net neutrality. And they kind of interview a couple of them at the end. And it was interesting to hear their responses and how pretty much to a T everybody was like, F that noise. Not cool. And so it's a fun little article. It's just the way that Burger King's like, we believe you should get things the way you want it equally.
That's interesting. I really like that they did that.
Yeah, they've had a couple interesting commercials they've done. And I think, honestly, if I were to target anyone as to where good ads have gone, is it Arby's? It's either Arby's or it's Wendy's, but I think it's Arby's, who on social media has the best ad campaign ever.
Oh, yeah.
They have geeks who are producing their ads, and so they put together things from the restaurant in the form of, throwbacks to sci-fi movies, or in most cases, anime is what I keep seeing.
Nice.
And they do scenes out of fries and Arby's sauce
and cardboard
and
from the fry containers.
And they make these epic scenes and they put it out on social media.
They had Todoroki from My Hero Academia, and he has a scar on his face, and they had literally had ketchup on there that they smudged off so you could just barely see the scar.
And so somebody is really brilliant about it. And this is another way where I have to give credit to companies who are honestly keeping up with the beat of modern society and making ads that are relevant to today that I'm entertained and informed by.
Yeah.
I almost always will reward good advertising, especially stuff that's not just pandering to say, eat this, but entertains and informs me. It's like, all right, yeah, you did good there. I will spend my money there next time.
Arby's got me good.
Yeah, I did go to Arby's because of one. Go ahead,
I'm very
Ken.
sorry to say it, but me and a few of my buddies were kind of making fun of the advert. We like the purpose of it and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But, of course, the only way that Americans will understand what net neutrality is through a freaking burger advert.
So you weren't making fun of the advert. You were making fun of Americans.
That's fair.
And your perception
But come on.
of what we do.
Think of the perspective of the other countries where we're all talking about this net neutrality. But Americans apparently don't know about it until it's in their local burger joint.
Brexit. That is all. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey,
What was
Brexit.
Brexit.
Oh.
It gets quiet. I was gonna say, there's a lot of people
Mic
talking
drop.
about Brexit, and they're like, wait, what's that? Is that new burger?
To be fair, Trump just said we're going to be very good friends with us.
That trusting face you just made, yes. As we
He actually
politics.
apologized for his comments last year. I don't know if you saw that part. It may be just been UK news.
Wait, he apologized ever?
He actually apologized, yeah. It's because last year he shared a video on Twitter.
Why don't
that
they
was
share
from
that in the United
a fairly
States?
far-right group in the UK. And
Oh,
our
yeah.
Prime Minister got really annoyed at that and said,
Yep.
what are you doing? Why are you sharing a hate group? Like,
Yep.
what are you
well,
doing?
okay, so he apologized to that, but he hasn't apologized for all the videos he pressed forward from white supremacists. Because who
Yeah.
cares about that stuff? Oh, that's right, that's his base. Oh, sorry, no apologies. Let's let that go. Sorry. Anyhow, so yeah, just wanted to bring that up. That's kind of interesting to see where the current discussions of net neutrality are, and that's still happening, and the fact that some states are taking it in their own hands to do something about it. And so it goes back to, you can too. Tell your local representatives to represent you, and get net neutrality to be an issue wherever you're at. Heck, down with big ISPs, make small ones. Let's go to municipal ISPs everywhere so we can have fiber across the world.
So I wrote papers on this. I have multiple papers that I've written on this. I just been kind of sitting on. I think I mentioned it the last time it was brought up, but like, yes, worry about this. Talk to someone about it. Talk to your leading government body about it. Like,
Hey, they work for
It's
you.
the only way it'll be solved. It's the
well, so
only
in
way
this
we can actually do
particular case,
anything.
you can do it. They will listen to you. They don't want this either.
Yep.
On the legal side, definitely, if you want to be uninvolved in national politics, that is fine. I have my opinions on that, but at the very least, get involved in local, because how your voice will definitely matter to local politicians, and those things can have a massive impact, such as getting those local ISPs passed. The only reason that they get blocked is because there isn't enough attention paid at the local level. They can pass with a few involved people. You can make a big difference there, especially at the local level.
Definitely.
You know what? I'm not going to keep quiet about it, because you know what? Freedom is not free, and if you don't do something about this kind of stuff when it happens, then it's not you who's going to pay. It's going to be your children. It's going to be your grandchildren. Yeah, right now it's just net neutrality, and it's going to suck, and it's going to
annoying.
It's going to be
for now,
annoying
but
more
it's
than
gonna be
anything. It's going to
worse
cost
later.
us money where we don't deserve to be costed. It's going to make a nation less educated, because only the stuff that the government pushes or the ISPs push will be seen by the masses.
I'm not throwing away my shot.
Yeah, no, it's something that it's a struggle for me anytime I hear people acquiesce and kind of just give up and not say that they don't care, that I don't have any control, I can't do anything anyways.
So mad.
It's like, with that attitude, you can't, right? It's, how do we always joke about that? It's like,
Not with that attitude.
yeah, not with that attitude.
You
And
can't
of
do
course,
that. Psh, not with that attitude.
Yeah, you think that, and guess what? It'll absolutely be true.
Clearly, you're not trying hard enough.
So, gosh, okay. So, thank you. And it's funny because I think all of us who are very technologically attached to the internet and care,
Inclined.
we see and I think kind of feel the same way. And I've had people try to argue devil's advocate for this, and it seems to fall flat so quick. As much as you
Very
try to
difficult
say
to
it's
do.
good for growth and business and stuff, it's like, how is that any better than not doing that? And it seems to fall flat on its face pretty quick. Okay, before we go through the rest of this episode of just talking about net neutrality, because this is kind of just showing that there is progression, it's still a real thing, still care,
I could talk for a long time about it.
and
It's
we will
good.
have more
It's good.
discussion about it, because I know this is not going away anytime soon.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
this is not the
then we'll
first
have
time
to
we've
talk
talked
about
about it. We
No,
will do it
we'll
again.
do the last. And we may do some more, especially updates. If we ever see any legislation that's coming down the line or anything new that's coming up, we will do updates so that all of you can understand. And feel free to point people to the episode we talk about. In fact, to the exact point where we bring it up, and we can all have a discussion. And I would love for people to email in the show and let us know where we're wrong, or if there's differing opinions or ways we're missing looking at this, because we all seem to be kind of on a similar page. And this is an issue that's huge, and it's crazy to me how many people aren't aware. And so we'll do our part and try to get it out there. Please do the same.
And you know what else? We've actually talked about this a few times and said a few times, you know what, if anybody disagrees or has any other viewpoints about pro-net neutrality or anti-net neutrality, let us hear something different. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to talk about it. And so far, nobody's said anything. I mean, yeah, we're not
No.
it's because, yeah, I mean, admittedly, we're not one of the top 3 YouTube videos out there, or the top 3 on Twitch or anything like that. But you know, we still have a good few listeners out there, and not a single person of any of them has felt strong enough about this to disagree with us. that says something to me.
Oh no, it says a
All I'm
lot.
saying.
But at the same and you say this, hey, reminder, we're on Twitch now. It's our second full episode being on Twitch. And so if you haven't found us, if you'd like to share us with your friends, VTW Show X on Twitch. You can find us live on YouTube. You can also find us live every week on Twitch. So thanks to the technologies of Restream, we are able to be in multiple places at the same time. So throw it out there and let everybody know that when you join us, you can chat through those channels, but if you want to chat with everybody and be on the show and see your own comments put in there, join us through your local IRC whatever tool you use for IRC. Come into irc.quakenet.org and join the VTW channel, # or #VTW. You can also come in from the VTW Productions chat page and just log in right there, give yourself a nickname, and just use your browser, and you can come directly into the chat. That way you can talk to everybody at once. And so throw that out there. Before we go to your first article, Ken, we did get an email in from our friend Copy. So I want to throw this out there. Coming in, and this is a little late notice geek cred, but coming in from Copy saying, greetings, drunk, fearless leader, Dr. Lord, Reverend Professor, and Bachelor of Science with the highest of honors, Kenneth Neil Reed II, and House of Wayne. I bought myself a Switch for my birthday so I could play Fire Emblem Warriors, so I could get awesome screenshots of the 3D models of Lucina and Azura, the characters that I will be cosplaying this year. Unfortunately, nobody in this community knows anything about Nintendo, so it's a moot point. That is not true. While I don't know anything about Nintendo, the two others in this room who are looking very poignantly at the camera now...
Excuse you, I have Fire Emblem on my Game Boy Advance SP in the other room right now. You want to fight?
Which was gifted to you from Paco next to you.
Which is the original US release of Fire Emblem, which is not the first Fire Emblem that came out.
You want to talk Nintendo?
Hey,
I will physically fight you. Come here. I will fight you with my fists.
So
and my knowledge of Nintendo and Nintendo history.
While neither Ken nor myself perhaps can speak as effectively about Nintendo, especially in its current status, the others in the room, I have brought in support. Those who have geek beyond mine.
It's good to have it both viewpoints now.
Yes, exactly. And
so were you only planning on playing Fire Emblem?
No fighting. Stop it.
I'm salty. You want to go? What about Breath of the Wild? You don't want to experience the newest installation in the Zelda universe?
Okay. Next.
Down, girl.
And I'm sorry, Edimus. I don't know if anyone in this room has started playing Monster Hunter World because it's.
Oh yeah, the pre-release was Thursday.
Or something.
I haven't
know
yet.
It's console
Or the
based, and I don't have a
was
PS4.
Thursday.
I only have a Xbox One and PC. So as soon as they bring it to the proper, platform, that being the PC,
now I'll stab you.
I'll play it. You know it's the proper platform.
PC, yes.
Yes. That's
Although
what I'm saying.
you've backed the wrong pony with Xbox.
Well, I got Xbox because of Guitar
They
Hero.
lost.
Thank you. Rock Band.
Badly.
Because of Rock Band. Because of parties. That is the only reason I got an Xbox One.
To be fair, Wayne, you should actually get a PlayStation because I also have one now. So
that is not a reason to get one.
That
you
means
need to
it's now the
upgrade to
coolest console.
a better gaming PC is what you need to do. Meh.
Yeah, I'm still. Oh, don't worry, I'm
we
still
can post
pro
my
gaming
ID
PC.
there
I'm
for
just saying
those
it's
who
coolest
see the light of
console.
reason.
Anyhow, we will continue. The email, you heathens.
Oh, there was more to that?
Yes. So it's a mute point, but, and this is, I know, a very copy answer to talk about, but Phantasy Star Online 2, the original Mana trilogy, and Secret of Mana remake have been announced for the Switch.
Fun.
So they'll be fun if they end up outside of Japan. Now there's the key there.
Yeah.
If outside of Japan, because how long have we been waiting for Phantasy Star Online 2 on the PC to come into the US copy? How long now? Yeah. Yep. That happened. Also, Secret of Mana will be available on Steam as of February 15th.
Ooh.
And I pre-ordered copies for myself, my sister, and a lovely faraway friend. Not sure if there will be 3-player game like the SNES version was, but it would be great if everyone could play together. That's also the costume plan when we get our group up at Anime North 2019, because video game characters always seem to dominate our little anime convention. That's all for now. Much love, Lantis Copy Grayfield, level 99 Frost Mage of Pioneer 2. Nice. Also, what is it? Forever Druid of the VTW Guild and all things on Moonguard US is also Copy, but is not in that one. And as Copy reacts and says, since early 2013, we've been waiting for Phantasy Star Online 2 to not just be Japanese
Yeah.
or other places.
I mean,
so yeah.
I know people play it in the U.S.
Not because it's on a U.S. server.
Not because it's on a U.S. server.
Yes, exactly. And what was it? Greyfield. So
that
Copy
hard?
also mentions. Copy also says, "Hyde, take my falchion."
Bring it.
Actually, Babs brings up a good point that I hate to admit, but thank you again for the Fry's video or picture. With the price of video cards these days, consoles aren't so bad.
That's not wrong.
Have you seen that, Ken?
Not
that phenomenon?
wrong.
I have not, no.
Due to coin mining of various types, Bitcoin being one, but all the newer coins that have come out, you can't buy video cards in the U.S.
Oh, yes, I've heard all about this. Yes.
They're all almost 50% higher price than they should be, if not more.
We're
I thought it was
Bitcoin
the
bubbling.
more like medium to lower graphics cards, not the high
All
stuff.
No.
of them. 1080s are...
Oh,
so
Jesus.
my brother out in
Non-existent.
California sent me a picture from Fry's, one of the largest network of computer stores out there, and their shelves for video cards were empty. Completely
Yes.
empty.
It is becoming a
You know,
thing.
this is so bad for the environment. I'm sorry to be that boring guy, but you know what? Bitcoin mining is just ridiculously bad. We're killing our planet to mine a virtual currency that like isn't going to get you that rich. And really, you're as bad as the big companies when you do that anyway. You
Well,
are.
it's just such a... I don't know. It's such a volatile thing to be a part of. And
Yes.
so it just... Yeah.
It's sold as a currency, but it's not. It's technically an unregulated stock. And I know I have fought off...
Good having a lawyer on the show to give us some details about these things.
One worse, tax lawyer. So I can go boring places that most people can't follow. So it is an unregulated stock, and I have fought off several Bitcoin, I don't want to say prophets, acolytes. But basically it's unsecured, so it's going to be wildly fluctuating depending on the perceived value. And as we've seen in the past few, it's spiked to 19,000 and dropped down below 10,000. It varies pretty wildly. Yes, you do pay taxes on that when you sell it.
Oh yeah, it's still profit. It's transition of funds. It's just like money markets, things like that.
The
At all
audits are
cost.
coming.
Yeah, be aware. Oh God, everything online. Be aware. Audits. Taxman cometh. Taxman taketh everything. You may not be balling like a rapper, but watch how many rappers went from millions to having to do commercials for various food chains because they got broke because of the taxman. Don't be dumb.
And you will owe money on your Bitcoin transactions. Yes, even if you traded them for stuff. Yes, you will owe.
Yes. So other comments that came in, this one coming from the Twitch feed, from Edimus saying, so Salt Time, pre-release, and this is going back to Monster Hunter, was supposed to be at 10 p.m. at GameStops. Then without informing customers, they changed the release to 9 p.m. and closed their stores at 10.
Oh, that's
A lot of people didn't get their copies and said his roommate and he were going to cosplay our GameStop and ended up almost missing it entirely.
Ooh.
Hey, just like going to
That is an dick
event
move.
for a movie release where you advertise, paying more for certain features that you get at a movie. Communicate and know what you're doing and know what you've told your people that you're going to be doing so that you don't run into this thing where people come in expecting one thing and having it completely thrown away and other things happening. That is not good
I
business.
get that reference.
Yep, not good business.
If they did that to me, I'd have just said screw it and bought it somewhere else.
It's just, there's
I
so
hate
many
that.
right ways of doing things and so many not. Just so many not. So, yes.
That is awful.
Uh,
Whose terrible idea was that?
Like always, right? It's usually an individual store doing something because they're better than, different than, or something than who's really doing things. All right.
You done fucked.
So with those discussions, want to be able to pass on to you, Ken, the ability to go for other news, something that you've looked at.
I have quite a few things open here. Now, usually what I used to do is look under the sort of PC section of everything. Since I'm now touching into the PlayStation world, I am also sort of opening some tabs from there, and the sort of things that are going on in PlayStation world. So there might be some console stuff for once from my side, which is, I suppose, a good thing. But I still get emails, and I'm still mostly interested in the PC because that's my home.
It's our
That's what I
home, and
care
it's
about.
good. And as soon as you can afford to buy a real PC, you'll be back. I know it.
Yeah, maybe one day. Maybe one day. So I'm gonna just mix these up randomly though. Okay, first of all, oh sweet, World of Warcraft.
Oh god.
So something I didn't actually get a chance to really talk about last week, but there's been a massive change in how World of Warcraft works just now. Let me get the update patch logs up here. Patch notes, because it was pretty huge differences, and I think you may actually have some opinions that in the favor of this actually, Wayne.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you might actually like some of these updates. So this is 7.3. I need to work which version we're currently on because I think I'm looking at the wrong notes. But the biggest one is that previously, you know how you had different regions with the very specific levels in it, so that if you're in Elwyn Forest and you actually accidentally stumble across into Darkshire or over to Redridge Mountain, that kind of thing, you might accidentally get killed by a spider 30 times your level and it'll just eat you alive.
Yeah, I used to love that. Going into places I wasn't supposed to go as a rogue and therefore like sneaking around everywhere to see how far I could go before I would die and having to ghost crawl myself, and this is back in the day, to find flight paths. Having to ghost myself through to get to a town or a village or a little encampment that I had no business being at, just so I could get the flight path and ahead of time from anyone else, and then come there later like, oh, I know where that is. Ha ha. Yes. Anyhow.
So you can still do that, but they've now... I thought you'd actually like these changes, to be honest. They've actually changed it now, so the majority of the different lands, at least per expansion in a way, for the most part, you can now access at any level. So,
boo, boo! That's noob talk. That is for like little greenhorns that don't like to have any challenge in the world. The non-Cuphead playing people.
Oh no! I completely and utterly disagree in terms of challenge, and I'll explain why in a moment.
Okay.
So first of all, the starting zones are still pretty much the same. They're like level 1 to 20, right? So they're all the same, the starting zones. So you can't go to Elwyn Forest level 60, right? That'd be no challenge. However, everything else is at least to an extent a much bigger range. For example, Eastern Plaguelands is now level 40 to 60. Badlands is 40 to 60. Burning Steppes 40 to 60. Southern and Northern Stranglethorn Vale is 25 to 60. But then, when you turn 58 or when you turn 60, you then have a decision. You can either go to Northrend or Burning Crusade. It's up to you how you want to do it, which expansion you want to do. So you can completely skip out Burning Crusade if you want to, or you can completely skip out Zombieland if you want to.
So essentially what they did is, it sounds like they leveled up Burning Crusades and kind of brought Northrend down a little bit so to balance them, or allow them to both scale through that same time frame, or that same level frame.
The biggest difference, the most noticeable thing when you're playing, is that now it's no longer a cakewalk. So before, you would go in and if you had all of the account-bound items that gave you XP bonuses, right? You'd end up getting like an extra 70% bonus, and if you're rested as well, you get another 100% on top, and then you do like 2 dungeons and get 2 levels, no matter where you are across the leveling spree. Now, a dungeon will take you twice as long. You can only pull one group at a time. You will wipe occasionally, and sometimes you have to use CC. Yeah, it's like...
Wait, so you mean you actually have to play the game again?
Yeah, and the dungeons are now pretty much any level. So once you get to level 15, I think it is, you can do any dungeon from 15 to 60. So you can go to Scarlet Monastery, you can do Gnomeregan, you can do whatever you feel like, and it's going to be something of a challenge.
Okay, no, this is interesting to me because I will freely admit there's still a lot of instances I never did in WoW, because by the time I would get to them, everyone else was passé, pass it, done, I don't care anymore. Yeah. And so I never got to do Dire Maul. I never got to do the real run through Gnomeregan or anything like that. I did some of the basics, and just I remember hearing all these stories about how epic certain things were. You never had to. No, you still don't have to get keyed or anything in like Upper Blackrock, Lower Blackrock Spire or anything like that. But
no,
I remember always hearing those stories and never getting to do it, and so that interests me. Almost to the level as Copy brought up about, whenever they finally bring out the vanilla servers they announced. But, yeah.
I'm not so interested in that personally, because I think that's going to be a lot more...
You don't want to go back to...
People always put nostalgia on the past, but the problem is they forget all the bad points.
Come on, level 40 before you get a mount.
The talent system.
Level 40 and 1,000 gold before you get a mount.
Ranks of Frostbolt. When you get level 60, you'll have like 14 ranks of Frostbolt inside your spell diary. Screw that.
Yes.
Screw that entirely.
Yes.
I
Where you
don't
have
want
to
to see
choose
that
exactly
again.
which version. You have to go back to the actual trainers to level up your spells and things like that. You know, the good old days where it sucked.
Where you had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to.
Back in my day, I had to log into a server
Hey.
and we had to have 40 people on the same server, let alone the same guild, just to do a dang raid.
Demon Souls. I mean, you know, that's all I'm saying there.
Don't get me wrong. There's fun in challenge, but then there's not fun in unnecessary like virtual walls and abstraction. Riding skill costs you like all the gold you had. I mean, just so that you didn't have to walk everywhere. That's literally walk up the snow both ways kind of argument. Like
I
there is
remember
no benefit to that
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of gameplay.
My younger brother, Earthweaver, bought me my
turn
first
walk
mount.
mode on. Nothing's stopping you. Just turn on walk mode. Walk everywhere.
Well,
just don't teleport. Destroy your Hearthstone. Just walk everywhere. That's fine. You can still get that from the game if you really want to play like that. You can. You know. Just put your graphics mode off. It looks the same. I mean, just
turn it back to old graphics
instead of DirectX 11. You'll get the same experience.
Run faster.
I just don't get it.
Well, there's two sides of it. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see when it happens, whether
get
people
some
truly
of it,
like
right.
it. It'll be interesting.
I get playing games in hard mode and stuff is fun, but it's not hard mode if you just want to walk slow. That's all
Hey,
I'm saying.
I'll put it this way.
Right.
I will almost commit to when vanilla mode comes out in WoW that I'd be kind of willing to do an experiment and play like levels 1 through 20 in both like the current modern mode, like roll a new tune, roll 1 through 20, see how far you get, see what the experience is like with a dedicated group of maybe 10 people, and then turn around and try to do the same thing on vanilla and kind of mention the differences between what it was like to experience each of those runs.
Hey, it also depends how true to the vanilla it actually is, right? That's
You're
kind
right,
of a big part
because
of it.
we make assumptions all day long about what it means to be a vanilla server. Where does that cutoff go? Because things like Cross Realm, right? Being able to take tunes
that
from
just
Cross
didn't
Realm, looking
exist.
for groups, things like that. None of
That's
that
a good point.
existed
You said
in
you want to
vanilla.
experience dungeons properly. If you do that in Classic, that's what you'll get. Is what it was like in Classic. Spending
waiting-
3 hours in the stone waiting for your freaking healer to show up, and then he just logs out. That's what Classic was like.
Oh god, I remember the first time we hit Molten Core and we made it down the steps. That was as
Yeah.
far as we went to the very first cave after playing like it was like 3 hours waiting for people to queue and like an hour of actual gameplay, dying to the core hounds or whatever multiple times or whatever it was right on the steps, getting into the first like tunnel or whatever, and that was it. We called it. It was like, okay,
Yep.
that was something. Yeah.
It's
Anyhow.
a good first experience. So the other big thing is that it's the same sort of scaling now with the mobs as well. You will not be able to walk. Previously, like, even on the same card as I have now, I would walk into I get a quest in an area. I'd walk into that area. I'd pull like 8 different mobs, as many as I could nearby, AoE them down, don't get hurt, and then level up. Right?
Yep.
Not the case now. I'll try to pull 1. If I get 2, I can do it with cooldowns. Right? But if I try to take on 3, that's when I got to polymorph something. Right, or do some other sort of trickery, or just run,
actual
right,
CC
and just
and control
teleport away.
Yep.
And it's actually more difficult. Now, admittedly, that's not for the latest expansion and stuff, because certain characters in my latest expansion I found to be quite easy, and others I found it very difficult. For example, in my Hunter, when I first started playing a level 100 plus with my Hunter, that was quite difficult at first. But then once I got some of the local gear, it got a bit easier. So it's a bit mixed then. But for the actual leveling experience, it is again a challenge. It is again enjoyable, and something else that this is going to blow your mind. When questing, you see other people.
Wait, what?
You see other people in these regions doing quests. You'll group up with them to take down certain enemies and do quests together because it's quicker. Because you need to again. Before it was
that
like
organic,
why
that organic
just
grouping and
AoE
stuff.
everything.
Yeah, organic grouping, actually having to find friends and do stuff together. What?
The death of LFG.
So they
No.
clearly listened to some people and have tried to sort of bring back some of that nostalgia. So
That'll be
that's the first
interesting.
part that I wanted to bring up here.
Okay.
Was all the patch notes. Next up, I wanted to mention. Here is. Okay, so this was out 3 days ago. World of Warcraft classes to get an overhaul to make them more unique in the Battle of Azeroth expansion coming out soon. This is from
Interesting.
IGN. It goes on to say by Shabana Arif. We already know that World of Warcraft is doing away with the traditional raid class sets in the upcoming BOA expansion, but Blizzard has given us more details on the changes they'll be implementing to balance the classes to make them more unique, including new abilities and refining the talent system. The plans are detailed in the latest developer water cooler blog, with the focus on emphasizing what makes each class unique and providing greater distinction among their various capabilities, especially when it comes to utility, tools that fall outside the core roles like damage, healing, or mitigation. So it seems like they actually want to bring in some other elements to the game that aren't just, choose a role, learn the rotation of that role, and then that's you. There might actually be some thinking involved and some benefits and negatives to each class, like there used to be, right? Like back in the day, if you went shaman back in the day, they were pretty awesome, ridiculous damage, and you're just frost shock something that would die. Whereas if you went druid and you did anything other than healer, you would have been laughed at. They would say, "Why are you doing anything that's not a healer, bro? Why are you even playing that class?"
Yeah.
Right? Or if you played Paladin and try to do Ret and try to do DPS, people would mock you. Like, what are you doing? Just go a warrior if you want to do damage.
Doing any kind of warlock other than a shadow?
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Or priest, yeah.
Shadow priest,
and that was the problem. That was the problem back then. Whereas the problem with that was that it was all the classes were broken. Whereas now they've gone too far, and all the classes work. You can play wherever you want. You can still get good DPS. You can still perform your role, but they're all very similar now. Like, they all have all tanks have a taunt ability. They all have the AoE ability. Like, if you place the same abilities that do effectively the same thing in the same places, you can play any tank role. You can play any healer role, and you can play any DPS role, right?
It's just basically you're playing them all with a different skin with a different name for whatever the ability is.
Yeah, a different spell animation or whatever. So these kind of changes I don't see as a bad thing, and I think it's kind of a good thing they're planning to do this if they do it correctly. If they actually bring along something that's more unique and more challenging and actually makes us do something outside of a role and actually play a class. That would be nice. Really define the difference there, and that's a worthy goal. And I can't be bothered reading the rest, so I'll have it.
Fair. Well, speaking of things from the past that look like they're going to get a future change or something to it, an article coming in from bleedingcool.com talking about Peter Molyneux, and specifically how he reacts to rumors of a new Fable game.
Ooh.
So, Ken,
Fable's
Microsoft reportedly has Forza Horizon developer Playground Games working on a new Fable game, and 22 Cans designer and Fable creator Peter Molyneux spoke with IGN about what he'd like to see from the newest game in the series. It says Molyneux left Microsoft and Lionhead Games, the original Fable studio, back in 2012 after Fable The Journey. He then joined up with former Lionhead CTO Tim Rance at 22 Cans. To date, 22 Cans has sold early access on multiple titles including Godus, Godus Wars, and The Trail. Despite 3 years of development and a large Kickstarter for Godus, none of 22 Cans products have left early access. The challenge of new studios these days. I see as Hando points heavily that there's something in the mailbox. Maybe? Let's see. I see something. I see notices of people who are following us on Twitch. Haha. Which is nice. Thank you guys. But we will continue. You say that. I don't see it yet, Hando. Mailbox dance. Never mind. I get that. That's from WoW. Sorry. My bad. Dancing at the mailboxes. For coins. Yes. Does that only happen on Moonguard, or does that happen everywhere? So,
it's more than dancing. Dancing is probably the tamest part of Moonguard.
Dancing's how it starts.
Oh dear.
It's kind of like an escort service, right? I just need someone to accompany me to dinner tonight.
Yikes.
Anyhow, quote, the Fable story hinted at a dramatic time before Fable 1 when the guild was founded. This would be a perfect setting for Fable 4, Molyneux said, noting that, quote, the land of Albion would be much more primitive, the magic much more attuned to nature, and combat much more brutal. The first two games in the series hinted at a dramatic creation of the guild, and so Molyneux said he could see Fable 4 serving as a great opportunity to allow players to found the guild. In terms of combat, Molyneux told IGN he'd love to see brutal, visceral, and fluid combat systems that left permanent scars. Weapons like short swords, long swords, daggers, spears, longbows, and crossbows all having their own combat feel and specialities.
I like that.
Molyneux also thinks that the magic system should get a complete overhaul, giving players the ability to, quote, craft their own unique system. Says we pretty much blanket agree with the magic system overhaul, if only because it's been so long since we last saw a game in the series. And the way gamers approach combat in Magic in 2018 is much different than 2010. Molyneux would also like for players to be able to choose their familiar and have their own horse they can train, as well as their own home they can, quote, build up from scratch to an abode fit for a hero. Which basically amounts to the customization options of pretty much every major budget current gen RPG. Also, most of the features were available in the all of the previous games, which meant they're likely to see a reappearance in Fable 4. Now, funny is, as he's saying these things, and granted, it's not that he's working them so much as he's saying, would be cool to see some of these things in a new Fable game. A lot of what I heard was, wait, you mean you want Fable to be Breath of the Wild?
That'd be really cool, though.
Yeah, I'm not complaining, to be honest.
Like, you're not wrong, but at the same time, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, do that.
Now, admittedly, I'm the one in the room who's never played a Fable game.
What?
What?
Oh, jeez. Like, I think I own one of them.
All
and
All right,
started
I'm kicking
picking
you
it
off
up
Zelda
once.
for a while. Fable's next.
No, yeah. And so,
Thank you.
Stop it.
You're welcome.
Stop it.
All right, I got you.
I just not attracted to Fable. I don't
Guess
know
what?
why.
Fable's not attracted to you either, but you know who's gonna save Albion? It's you.
Oh God. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that's one that I never followed. I know Ken was a huge fan. You played what? The first 3? Did you play all the
I
first
played all of
three?
them. Yeah. Played all of
Same.
them. They're great.
Okay.
They're great.
All the people have more time to play video games than I.
No, it's
look
not
at
more
me
time.
shifty
It's
eyes
more
across-
determination.
It's true. Pure determination.
Also, don't forget, Fable 1 came out in 2004, so I just started high school. So yeah, I had more time.
Yeah, that's right in
Yeah.
your time frame. Oh, let's see. I was in the military at that point. Yeah. Or actually, no, I
Yeah.
had just gotten out of the
I
military.
didn't
But
have a
anyhow.
job yet.
Yeah. Anyhow.
I was a
So
fetus.
notices of a new Fable game coming out, and what the original creator has some thoughts about. So
That's
I thought that
super
would be
exciting.
appropriate and cool. I think we have time for at least one more of yours, Ken.
Sure. And Peter Molyneux is the man, so I'm looking forward to anything that he's interested in. Even his Android games are great, by the way. I recommend them if you haven't already seen them.
That's true. He does do a
all
lot
right.
of like mobile.
Yeah, he does good ones. Okay, Facebook announces pilot program for game streaming. So they want to be a Twitch competitor.
Huh.
Interesting.
Pretty interesting considering they've got a big, starting place.
Yeah. Meaning you
and
can
plus
stream
you can-
directly to their site, and everybody can just like, follow, and everything else that's already in your social media platform.
Absolutely.
Scary.
And it also means that you can do it to your own page already. So if you're already well established, like to be honest, for us, this is actually kind of a good thing if we can.
Yeah, we have much
stream
more
to
followers
Facebook.
that are on our Show X page every day than actually watch the stream each week.
Well, it's because of the great memes. Like I post the best memes.
all
The
of your
freshest, dankest
all of your
memes.
dankest memes.
The dankest,
Yeah.
juiciest memes.
Yikes.
They are. I highly recommend checking them out. Showx on Facebook.com.
Plug.
So, yeah,
Plug yourself.
plug. Pluggity plug. Facebook has announced a pilot program for its own game streaming platform. The focus of Facebook's new gaming creator pilot program, according to the announcement post, will be capitalizing on its already massive audience to create a thriving community for gaming content creators. It will allow live streaming in 1080p or 60 FPS, and Facebook has committed to add additional features based on input from creators. They're also examining monetization options, which will be available to participants in the initial pilot program. So how much does Twitch do in terms of monetization? I didn't think there was much available.
Well, so Twitch has a ton of ad revenue that comes through. Companies left and right do ad revenue, and people can pay for premium streams to get rid of some of the ads and to support their creators. There is so much money going through Twitch; it's stupid. And I forget. I know we had looked it up at one point back in the day, like the kind of average revenue of what a streamer makes, depending on how many views they have at any given moment. It's not insignificant. And so, yeah.
Well, if you have a good number of views, of course.
Well, but even then, it only takes so much before you start seeing actual profit. It gets higher and higher to become like ridiculous.
Of course. Although some content creators have already made a name for themselves via Facebook Live, the official launch of the program will open the platform to additional gaming personalities. Facebook says the pilot program is focused on helping creators build more meaningful and engaged communities on Facebook than anywhere else. The program also aims to increase visibility through Instagram and Oculus, which are also, of course, owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a pretty good idea because Facebook really does, like, regardless of the whole corporate and giant monopoly that they have, in terms of just hooking in with what they already have, groups, pages, all this sort of stuff together, news feeds, you can tag your friends and stuff. You don't need to get them to sign up to it, you know? If we want to stream something, we can tag our entire friends list on it. That means we've got hundreds of people who can already look at it. Unlike Twitch, where you start off with maybe like 8 people that you know on it. That's a huge base to begin with, and that's pretty interesting. And I think they're going to take off pretty quickly. I think that will do well.
No, it's one of those things that they have such a huge platform anyways. It's only going to grow, right? It's only going to grow. And so, dang. And, oh gosh. So, coming from the chat, as Greyfield, Copy kept up saying, continuing on about Moongar shenanigans stuff, saying, I'm always afraid to log in as Miss Harak. People are always creeping on him. But continues to say, Wayne, I like your new housemates. Says, they're as offended by your inexperience as a gamer as I am.
Yeah, it's true.
Man, I feel targeted and called out.
I don't live here.
Yet.
I think I'm being threatened into it, though.
But regardless, yes. So anyhow, you were saying, Ken?
They did live here.
Well,
Just that's all we make them do.
Yeah.
Catch
That's
the
not
heck
a
up
bad
on
thing.
games.
No,
I'm pro this.
I like how
think
everyone
this
else
a
is
good
in favor of this, like forcing me to sit in here and game games more.
No.
Actually,
So
have to continue streaming and finishing Majora's Mask, and then have to go on to other things.
And then
Fable's
someday,
next.
And I read other books that have been sitting out.
Someday.
you have to stop reading for a little bit. You'll have to. We'll make you a schedule.
and when you put on your big boy pants, we'll start you on Demon Souls,
Excuse you.
the predecessor to the watered down Dark Souls. That's all I'll say about it.
I have a goal where I'm not supposed to buy any new games. I'm supposed to get through the games I own. All 400, some of them on my Steam list, of which I've never installed over 300. I have some work to do.
If we suffered, you'll suffer too. That's
I went
just
to
how this
Water
works.
Temple without a guide.
Honey, you had a guide for the
yeah,
rest of
that's
it.
a-
It doesn't count.
I'm just trying to get through the damn games.
What have you
Yes,
done in
Ken?
the last decade, though? You need to show up something more recent than that.
Water Temple was not that long ago.
Water Temple was
a
like,
couple months ago.
yeah.
Anyone who's gone through it will remember forever
Oh, God.
and ever.
And with that, it is about time for us to end the show this week, as Wayne gets targeted by everyone on the interwebs.
So guess what we're gonna do in about 20
We're gonna make
minutes?
me a damn body form or something. I don't know, but we'll see. Anyhow,
While playing games.
jeez. Ken, would you like to send us out and remind everybody about the art contest and things like that?
Absolutely, the art contest is still there. Please do go take part. I'm quite happy to announce that I've still been doing some photography on the side, as much as I
Nice.
can, and I'm now
your stuff's
expert
beautiful.
level on Guru shots. I got
Good
myself
job,
up for the
sir.
rank.
I need to get back into Guru Shots. It's fun. So,
It's
yes.
really fun. And it's really satisfying going up a rank. I've been working on this one for about a month and a half now, and the next one is so far ahead. I don't know how I'm ever going to get there. So check us out all around the place. Yeah, check out the art contest on the forums. Go to www.vitaproductions.com. Go to forums at the top, and you can then go to the ShowX board and find the art contest within there. I do recommend it. It's good fun. And there's a long time until the end of it yet. A bunch of themes you can come take part in, and it's a good way to force yourself, kick yourself in the butt to go do some more of your art. And if you have some confidence that you might win, then you might also get some extra exposure online. It might not be much, but hey, getting a Facebook shout and a shout on our show, it can't hurt, can it? Check us out on twitter.com/showx for the show itself, which is not really used for anything but the official announcements for the show going live and such. Check out twitter.com/dogdead for Mr. Wayne here, twitter.com/GoX for myself. You can also find us on facebook.com, search for ShowX there, like I said, for all the dank memery, and it's you will not regret that at all. And also send us an email to showx@vitaproductions.com for next week so we can read out on air, talk about anything you want, including news, articles, as well as your own personal geek cred. What have you been up to that's worthy of geek cred? Thank you very much for having me on the show, sir, and thank you again to your lovely guests for joining. It's always a pleasure having them on.
Definitely. Thank you, Ken, for being on, and thank you to both Akko from Zenko Akko Cosplay and Guildhall Galatea, and Hide My Air Cosplay, all available on the interwebs if you look around for them as well.
Follow me, please.
Yes, follow them, follow us.
I did it.
Thank you.
And we want to thank all of you for listening
We
to
did
us.
see
And
that.
please tell your friends about ShowX on VTWProductions.com. You can find us every week, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT here on both YouTube and now on Twitch TV. Check us out, and we'd love to see you in the future. Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you again next time. Bye!